In this lesson, we are going to look at WordPress local installation. What this means is we're going to be installing WordPress on our local computer so we can start working on our website offline. Okay, so if you install WordPress locally, you would work offline without having to have an internet connection to connect to a server in order to build your website. If you are wondering why we need internet connection, WordPress is a web content management system, so it works on a server. You can't install WordPress as an application on your computer. It needs to have that server environment. As you can see the image at the background of this slide, you would notice the rack of servers in this server room. As you can see, all the servers are turned on as indicated by the green lights on each of them. These servers need to be on 24 hours so that you would be able to have access to your website or web content. If any of the server goes down, whatever is hosted on that server would be offline until the server comes back up. That is why when choosing a hosting account, one thing you should look out for is the server downtime. Though it is very hard to get 100% server uptime because most times the server needs to reboot, or if there is a switch to a backup generator. In any case it goes down, it should be able to come back up immediately. So some hosting companies put this into consideration. So back to WordPress local installation. Because you are starting out, I assume you wouldn't want to host the website you are building for learning purposes on a live server, because that would cost you money for the hosting and the domain name which you are going to purchase, and also internet subscriptions, because you need to be online to access the server. Instead, we are going to convert our PC to a server. I'm going to take you through that step shortly. So when you convert your PC to a server, you can install WordPress and work on WordPress on your local computer. Remember, WordPress is not an application you can install on your PC using the execution file or DMG file if you're on the Mac. WordPress is a folder that consists of website files, including HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and also you need a database to run WordPress. So all this cannot be achieved by just installing it as an application on your computer. Rather, you need a server software that will help you run WordPress on your local computer as a server. Before we go into that process, I would like to show you how the internet works, or how the web works, so that you understand exactly what we are going to be doing in the next few minutes. So, how the web works at a glance. Over here on the right, you can see the web server, which are those heavy computers that are stacked up in a server room. And over to the left, you can see a web client. This can be you on your computer. So you send a request to the server using the HTTP. HTTP is a protocol that web browsers communicate between two devices connected to the internet. So in this case, you have a web client, which is you, and also a web server which hosts the web files you are trying to access. So you send the requests via the URL through the protocol known as HTTP, and that request goes to the server, and then you get feedback based on the request you made on the web client or on your PC. So this is how data transfer between a server and a client system works. Over on the right, you can see the young man there sitting on his computer, and he sends a request via the HTTP. The extra S there stands for secured. This is trying to tell the user or website visitor that your website is secured for maybe transactions or secured for handling your data, your personal data. So it's a requirement these days to have a secured HTTP protocol. And this SSL, which it is normally called, is issued by your web hosting company. So 5 years before now, it didn't really matter if you have HTTPS or not. People can still access your website, but there will be a notification on the browser that this site is not secure. But these days, it's no longer an option. You need to have HTTPS, else your website won't even load for the website visitor to see. Instead, they will get a warning that your website is not secure. Alright, we're going to look at that in details in the advanced section of this course. But for now, let's continue with our explanation of data transfer between a server and a client system. So this young man sends out a request for a web page via the internet. So this request is being sent by the web visitor and received by the server. So the server gives an HTTP response back through the internet where the request came from, and it is being delivered as a web page to the website visitor. So they see the content they requested for via the website address they entered on their browser. Now over to the left on servers, server handles the HTTP requests and also handles the response. So there are different systems or softwares or technologies that make the web server work the way it works. There are quite a few number of them, but I'm going to introduce you to the ones that are most widely used in web development. So the first is the Apache. Apache is a software for the web server. This software controls what happens within the web server. We also have other server softwares like IIS, which is the Internet Information System. This is owned by Microsoft. So most, if not all, WordPress platforms are being hosted on Apache servers. And then the next thing that makes up the server is the MySQL database. We also have PostgreSQL and other database softwares. MySQL is widely used by WordPress developers, and from my experience, I've not had any issues with using MySQL as a database of choice. In addition to that, it is quite very simple. Even if you are not a programmer, by understanding a few steps, you would be able to perform some very basic actions that is required for your website development or design. And then next is PHP. PHP is a programming language, and it is a language in which WordPress system is written on. Most of the web applications on the internet today started with or are built with PHP. For example, Facebook. Facebook was built with PHP until recently, when they started introducing some other dynamic languages to extend the features of the platform. So PHP is a very common programming language. Even though we are going to do little or nothing as regards programming language with WordPress, because it's supposed to make it easy for you to build your website without having to know programming or touch any line of code. But bear it in mind that PHP is a programming language for WordPress. So that's it, guys. We have Apache for the server software, we have MySQL for the database, and PHP for programming language. These three make up your server, and in the next few minutes we are going to install a package called XAMPP. XAMPP is a local server software that allows you to convert your computer into a server. In the XAMPP application or software, you have the Apache, which is the server software. You have access to MySQL database, and also you can run PHP or Perl programming language. That is why you have the double P at the end. So XAMPP. The X stands for cross-platform. Apart from XAMPP, we have other server softwares that can convert your local computer to server. We have WAMP, where the W stands for Windows. So it only works on Windows computers. Windows, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. And then we have MAMP. The M there stands for Mac. This works only on Mac operating systems. But we are going to be installing XAMPP, which is cross-platform Apache, MySQL, PHP, and Perl. It is called cross-platform, hence the X, because it works both on Windows and on Mac. You can install XAMPP on your Mac operating system or Windows operating system. But note that the installation files would have a different file extension. For Mac is .dmg and for Windows it is .exe. Take note of that. So we are going to install our server software XAMPP on our local computer next. So here we are on my computer, and I'm going to install XAMPP by going to apachefriends.org. I'll just Google Apache Friends. So this will bring it up here as the first item on the list. So I'll click on to open up XAMPP. So here you can see we have download for Windows, Linux, and the Mac operating system. So I'm on the Mac right now, and I'm going to download for Mac. If you are using Windows, download for Windows, or if you are using Linux, you download for Linux. So the current XAMPP version is 8.0 and the PHP version is 8.0. So this is why you should download only from Apache Friends, because these are the developers, and if there is any new release, they are the ones to update first. If you download from other sources, you might be downloading a lesser version. So that being said, I'm going to click on the Mac, and my download is ready, so I would save this on my desktop. So it's about 358 megabytes on Mac, so I'm going to give it time to download. Alright guys, so our download is completed. I'm going to open this in Finder. This is the disk image. I'll double click on it. So just the normal way you install applications on your Mac operating system or Windows operating system, whichever operating system you're using, the installation process is the same. So I would drag my XAMPP folder to my applications icon. So it's copying my XAMPP files to my applications folder. I would go ahead and launch XAMPP. So right now our XAMPP application has been installed and you can see it here. This is how it looks on Mac. You might have a different user interface on Windows. So I'll close the installation out, and before you use XAMPP or any server software, you need to start the service. So once you click on start, this will start up the server software. As you can see here under services, we have Apache and MySQL. So they are grayed out because I've not started the server yet. And this is the localhost port number. Okay, so I'll go back to general, then I'll click on start. So our server has been started and we've been assigned an IP address, as you can see here. So the status is now green. If I go to services, I can start all of these services here. So I'll click on start all. So we have Apache and MySQL. And right now if I go to localhost, I get the message that says it works. This is telling me that my server has been installed and all the services have been started. Now let me bring up the XAMPP software again. If I go to network, you can see we have localhost /8080. This is the port that allows you to communicate between the host machine and the services installed as a result of our installation of XAMPP, for example Apache and MySQL. So I'll click to enable this port and then I would visit this URL on my browser, localhost /8080. So I'll go to localhost /8080. So here we have welcome to XAMPP. This is the XAMPP dashboard, and if I click on phpMyAdmin, this will take me to phpMyAdmin. This is the database area. This is where you create databases for your WordPress installation. Yes, you need a database to install WordPress, and I'm going to take you through the installation process. Now, to install WordPress, you would need to download WordPress from the official website, wordpress.org. Again, if you download from the official website, you would be downloading the latest version. So I just clicked on Get WordPress and then I'll download WordPress. I am not downloading an installation file, okay? I'm downloading a folder that contains website files like PHP, JavaScript, CSS, HTML. And the way I'm going to install WordPress is via XAMPP with the help of my browser. So I would save my WordPress file which I just downloaded to my desktop, close this out, and I'll show in Finder. So here we have WordPress which we just downloaded. So I would extract this because it comes as a zip file. So WordPress has been extracted, and if I scroll up you can see the WordPress folder here. So these are all the files that make up WordPress. So I'm going to install this WordPress file so we can start working on our website. And the way I'll do that is by installing it via the web browser. So I'll go back to the browser and back to localhost phpMyAdmin. So I'll click on databases. Now we have some sample databases here. You can go ahead and delete all of them if you want. So I'm going to create a new database. Now before I create a database, I already have the website I want to build in mind. The name of the website is The Million Shoppers, and this is the business name of my client. So for my database name, I would say The Million DB. DB stands for database. I'm using it so that you won't get confused. So I'll leave this option selected as it is, and then I'll click on create. So we just created our database, and you can see we don't have any tables found. Database consists of rows and columns which form tables, and this table holds information. So we don't have any tables in our database, which is fine. Now I'll go back to my desktop where I extracted my WordPress. So I'll rename the WordPress folder as The Million, which is my website name. So the WordPress file has been renamed, and if I open it up, you still see the same WordPress files we saw initially. So in order to install this folder, I will copy it to the htdocs folder which was created from our installation of XAMPP. If you are on Windows, you would find this folder by going to your local drive C and then scroll down a bit. You would see XAMPP folder. Open up the XAMPP folder and then you would see htdocs folder. So that is where you keep all your website files. But on the Mac operating system, to copy my WordPress folder to the htdocs folder, I would need to go back to my XAMPP, and if I go to the next tab here in the XAMPP application, which is volumes, you can see we have this option here, opt/lamp. So what I want to do here is I'll click on mount, and notice on here we just had a new option added, which is the IP address and our network. These are local networks. So we just have this added to our locations on the Mac. So I'll go back to my Finder and I'll click on the IP address. So here I can open the LAMP folder, and then we have htdocs over here. Okay, so this is htdocs, and I'll go back to my desktop, copy and paste the WordPress file I just downloaded and renamed into my htdocs folder. So for every website I want to design locally, I have to download WordPress, rename the WordPress folder, and put all of them inside my htdocs folder, and then create databases for them separately, which we just created one here, the MillionDB. Notice how we don't have any tables in our database yet, but after our WordPress installation, our tables will be created for us automatically. So I'll go back to see if my folder, okay, it's still copying, so I'll give it some time to copy. Alright, so we've successfully copied our WordPress file into the htdocs folder. Now I'll go back to my web browser. Having created the database, on the next tab, I'm going to enter localhost :8080 on the Mac. For Windows, it's just localhost / the name of the folder, which is your website folder. And I'll click enter. Here we have the WordPress installation page setup. Once you install the XAMPP server and start the services, create your database, download WordPress, rename your WordPress folder, and move them to the htdocs folder. If you call that folder using this URL here, localhost :8080 / the name of your folder, it will run the WordPress setup page like this, whether or not you have internet connection. So here we have welcome to WordPress. Before getting started, we need some information on the database. You will need to know the following items before proceeding. So you need to know the database name, the database username, the database password, database host table prefix. So these are the information you need to install WordPress on your local computer. So I'll click on let's go. So for the database name, remember we created a database. If I go to localhost, you can see our database name here, the MillionDB. So I'll enter exactly that here. And for the username, we haven't created any username yet, but by default, if I go back to the server here and I'll click on user accounts, you will see we have some predefined users in our user account overview. If you look at the last one, the username is root, and we have the host name localhost. There is no password set, and all global privileges have been assigned to this root user. So I can go ahead and use this predefined user without creating a new user. So to keep things simple for now, I'm going to use the predefined one, and then maybe later after this lesson I'll show you how to create a user for your database. So I'll go back to our installation and I'll enter root, password set to nothing, and the database host is localhost. And for table prefix, this is used to create your tables. Okay, so you can give it any prefix you want, or you can leave it as it is. As a habit, I use the initials of my website name as the table prefix. For example, I'm creating this website for the Million Shoppers, and I would use the initials, the Million Shoppers. So it creates my database using the prefix, the Million Shoppers. This way I would be able to differentiate two databases in the case that I want to migrate my website installation from one server to another server. So for the user, I'm using the predefined root with no password because I'm installing this locally on my computer. When you are on a live server, please make sure you use a strong password and a username to avoid your website getting hacked. But since I'm on localhost, this can be forgiven. Okay, so I'll click on submit. So this next window is telling me that it's unable to write to wp-config.php file. So what this means basically is the installation did not continue because it couldn't find the wp config file. This file is responsible for the connection of your database to your website files. We can easily fix this, and what we are going to do to fix it is by creating our own wp-config.php file manually, and then we paste the following text into it. You can see WordPress has already generated the text that will go into our wp-config file. We didn't have to write all of this text, so these are written in PHP, which is the programming language for WordPress. So we're going to copy this text and then go to our htdocs folder, which was created by XAMPP, and then we open up our WordPress folder which we downloaded from WordPress. And let me switch this to list view so that we can see better. I'll sort it by the kind, so we have the folders first and then the files last. So here we have the WordPress folder structure. So we have the WP admin, which takes care of the admin area or the dashboard of your WordPress installation, and then we have WP content. This holds your content and media. Then we have the WP includes. If you notice here, we already have a wp config.sample file. So what we can do is we can rename this file, delete the sample, so we leave it as wp config, and then we paste the text we copied here from our WordPress installation. I would click to rename this as wp config.php. Then I'll hit enter, and I would open this file with Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code is a text editor. It's used for editing codes, or I can use Sublime Text, whichever one, but Sublime Text is a very light version, and I'll recommend you download and install Sublime Text if you want to edit codes faster. So I'll click to open this in Sublime Text, and then I'll select everything here and I'll paste the one I copied from WordPress installation. So I'll scroll down to our database area. You can see it already have our database name, it has a username, and our password is set to nothing. So I'll click on file and I'll save what we just did, and I'll close this out. So I'll come back to WordPress and then I'll click on run installation. So our database has been connected with our WordPress file and the installation is in progress. Next, I'm going to enter my site title, the Million Shoppers, and then the username to the admin account. So I'll leave it as admin. For the password, it suggested a password for me, so I'm going to enter my own password. Please take note of the information you used, because if you forget your username and password, you might not be able to log into the website you're just trying to install, and you may be forced to delete it and start all over again. Okay, so it's already telling me that my password is weak, but I'm going to ignore it because I'm installing this locally. So I'll click here to confirm the use of weak password. So here I would enter the admin email, and the next option says search engine visibility, discourage search engines from indexing the site. Only if you are trying to build a private website, then can you select this option, but if not, leave it as it is if you want your website to be indexed by search engines like Google, so they can crawl and find your website and index them when people search for keywords that are related to your website. So I would not discourage search engines from indexing this site. Then I'll click on install WordPress. So WordPress has been installed successfully. I can go ahead and log in directly to my WordPress dashboard. The username I chose was admin, and then my password was this. So here we have the dashboard of my WordPress website. This is where I control whatever happens on the front end. That is what people see. Okay, and the way to access your WordPress admin dashboard is when you go to your WordPress installation, no matter where you installed it, be it on localhost or on a live server. On a live server, this would be themillionshoppers.com/wp admin. But because I'm on a local host or a local installation on my Mac operating system, we have localhost :8080/themillion/wp admin. On Windows, this would read as localhost/themillion/wp admin. So if I copy out only this part of the URL and I'll go to the next tab and I'll paste and enter, this will take me to the front end of my WordPress website. So this is what the front end looks like. We just did this WordPress installation and we don't have any customization whatsoever going on. In future lessons in this course, we are going to look at WordPress in depth. Okay, so you can watch this lesson again, understand the process. Okay, and just like I promised, at the end of this lesson I was going to show you how to create a user in PHP My Admin. So I'll go back to the phpMyAdmin section and I would click on new here, and under the new section I'll click on add user account. So I would enter my username, and the host name I would select localhost or local. So this adds localhost as my host name. And then for the password, I will choose a password for myself. So of course the password strength is weak, but again I'm on localhost, so I'll enter my password again, and I'll leave the authentication plugin as it is. I'm not going to click on generate password because I already chose a password here. And on the next section, you can create a database for this user instantly by selecting this option, create database with same name and grant all privileges. Okay, so I'm going to skip that. And under global privileges, I'm going to check all to assign global privilege to this new user I created. So he's an admin, so he has to have access to all the privileges under administration, structure and data. So I'll scroll down, I would ignore SSL because I don't need it for localhost, and then I'll click on go. So a new user has been created, and if I go to user accounts, you would see the new user I created here. Ken, hostname localhost, password yes, and global privileges all privileged. So this is where I end this lesson, and in the next lesson we are going to look at how to install WordPress on a live server. We are going to purchase a domain name and hosting account, and I'll show you another way to install WordPress on a live server without having to download the WordPress folder to your computer, renaming the folder and copying it to htdocs or public HTML folder. So until then, I'll see you in the next lesson.